How you doing today? This is Dan Powers at Champion Solutions Group. We just returned from the IBM Think Conference out in Vegas. That's the shop behind me, where we had done a couple presentations in the Security Resilience Lab. Unfortunately, it wasn't filmed, and we had a lot of folks that enjoyed the presentation. So we decided that we were going to walk over the presentation that we just gave at IBM Think over on Wednesday and Tuesday, and do it here and try to post this out for folks that were interested.
So we had done 2 sessions at the IBM Think conference. We had quite a good turnout in both of them. Good rooms. Session ID 688, more secure than ever. Windows 10 and IBM BigFix. Again, this is Dan Powers, and I represent from Champion Solutions Group. And this is a replay of the presentation we gave there. So the year before, we were also out at the Think conference, and we were helping people use BigFix to automate their Windows 10 migration. And obviously, as that 2020 date becomes closer, Champion has seen a lot of our clients really start paying attention to this and need help migrating their Windows 7 machines over to Windows 10, trying to understand Windows 10 in general with the changes Microsoft are delivering and how they're going to manage that going forward. So we created this whole platform, if you will, and helped our customers with the Windows 10 Readiness Assessment Guide. And that's what we're going to walk through a little bit here today. Before I get in there, I do want to talk about, so this is around BigFix, IBM BigFix. So those folks that do use BigFix, great community out there from the user forums, from bigfix.me, certainly helped us quite a bit. We try to participate there. So just a quick plug, a great community to work with, folks. Everybody's eager to help you. A wealth of information. I urge you to check that out if you haven't done so already. But when we look at Windows 10, what are some of the main topics we have to look at? And part of the Champion Readiness Assessment, we have to figure out what type of vendors you're working with. These numbers here that we're going to see are some screenshots of our real readiness assessment and some actual numbers from clients. But the more vendors you have, if you have a lot of Dell, Lenovo, HP, Microsoft, just a bunch of different type of hardware, you're going to have to deal with this hardware to see if it's ready to run Windows 10 and overcome many hurdles, which we're going to talk about. And under each of those vendors classes, of course, how many different models of these do we have? Now, in our experience, the nice part is, for example, if you have a lot of Dells like this particular customer did, even though they had quite a few varying models of Dell hardware, if you could get a family of those, let's say the Dell Optiplex is working from BIOS, hardware, drivers, and all that, for the most part, the rest of that hardware in that same family was going to work pretty well. So again, not as hard as it seems, but some information we do have to collect there. The next thing we really talked about, and this did ask some questions during our topic in Vegas, was your current state, BIOS versus UEFI. So I'm not going to go into great detail about UEFI, although there were some questions about it, but the main points there that I wanted to bring out is UEFI is not a Windows 10 thing. It's not even a Microsoft thing. It's a hardware certification or a hardware consortium, and Macs and Linux and so forth have been using it for quite a while. And really what it is, it's kind of leaving BIOS, which is in the 80s, right? Hasn't changed much since then. Leaving that behind and getting your new hardware to boot and enable themselves under the UEFI standard for hardware booting. What Microsoft Windows 10, what does it mean to that? Is that you can take advantage of some of the advanced security aspects of Windows 10, like secure booting, device guard, credential guard, other things of that nature. You can only do that if your machines are UEFI enabled. So that's why it's very important, and it's a good topic to understand where you are today. If you were looking at your Windows 10 migration, again, understand the difference between BIOS and UEFI. Part of what we called our desired state is at the end of the day, you want to have at least 3 things. I want Windows 10 installed everywhere. I want 64-bit version of Windows 10 installed, and I want all of my hardware to be UEFI enabled. After you have those 3 things down, you can make decisions about secure boot, credential guard, and other security aspects at a later date. But this brings up another point in the bottom right-hand side is your BIOS versions. Out of all the different assessments we've done, this is normal, is that a lot of clients have devices that their BIOSes are old. The only new ones we seem to get are when people got new hardware recently. But Microsoft and the hardware vendor will recommend that you update your BIOS to the latest supported BIOS to make sure it supports UEFI and all the new features in standard. So again, another hurdle that you're going to have to consider in this Windows 10 adoption program. All of these data points and many more will actually start gearing towards what you're seeing in the bottom left-hand side here. You're going to understand what machines in your environment currently have to be replaced. What does that mean? It means they don't have the minimum hardware requirements, according to Microsoft, to run Windows 10. Now, some of those, mostly in our experience, are usually the video cards, or maybe they need a little more memory. The next column over here you're going to see is the machines, the reimage that can actually make it to Windows 10. The difference is some of these can do an in-place upgrade. In-place upgrade simply means it's kind of like putting a patch in. I'm moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10, not wiping the hard drive. I'm not making changes to applications. I don't have to worry about the user space. It's going to be a migration in place. The other ones mean it has to be a wipe. Why? Well, let's say if you're a 32-bit version of Windows 7, I can't make you a 64-bit version of Windows 10. I can't change the bitness. That means I have to wipe your machine. And most likely, if you're still running Windows 7 and you're still booting BIOS, we have to wipe your hard drive so that it is supported to run the UEFI, because it does change also the partition of your hard drive. So these are some of the issues, again, that you're going to have to overcome and be able to plan out in your adoption and migration of the Windows 10 platform. Warranty information was certainly something we brought into the fold. We, as said, make a lot of data points that we gather. We offer this back to the clients after we do our assessment, which can take less than 72 hours. Warranty doesn't necessarily affect, technically, your Windows 10 adoption. However, the reason why we collect this information is so that you can make intelligent business decisions. If I have a bunch of machines, in this particular case, this client had about 1,300 devices that could not meet the hardware requirements, we would then look at it from a life cycle standpoint. If these machines, warranty has been over for a year, 2 years, or coming close to the warranty end, the life cycle of that device was coming to an end, probably a good business decision to get new hardware. However, if these were machines that were still under warranty, still had some life in its life cycle, if you will, and we could understand why it couldn't make it to Windows 10, maybe it needed a bigger hard drive, needed more memory, a different video card, you could make the correct business decision where to spend your money so you could get everybody over to Windows 10 before that 2020 date is upon us. Another good data point that we collect, and this is from experience, if you are starting to migrate your machines, we do have to wipe machines to move them around. We really want to understand what is out on the endpoints. What data is in the user state? The user state is the person's documents, their browser history, maybe their cookies, sticky notes, all of these type of things, because you want a good user experience as you're doing this migration phase so that people will adopt Windows 10. What we've found is on average, most of our clients have a lot more data that's sitting on their endpoint devices than we first expected. So average profiles are somewhere between 6 to 11 gigabytes in size, and many of our clients are in the complex range, meaning they have user profiles that are well beyond the 12 to 15 gigs. Biggest one so far is 1.4 terabytes. So a lot of user data out there. It's led to sub-projects of actually cleaning up what people have stored on their devices, because it could be data that shouldn't be there. But at the end of the day, this and a lot of other data points is part of what we do in our readiness assessment, and we produce a report based on all the data we pull back, subnets, all these other data points not shown on the screen, that is giving you a guide or the effort it is going to take for your company to move over to Windows 10. What we realized after that is we could create a very easy workflow, if you will, to make this an automated process. So it starts by those analysis, the hard drive, CPU, disk space, user profiles, applications, all of those data points we talked about to determine if a device is compatible to go to Windows 10 or not. If it's not, we tell you why. Again, maybe it's just needs another 2 megabytes of video card or updated video card or something, and the machine is still under warranty. A better business decision might be to get new hardware video cards so that device could be compatible with Windows 10. The next decision tree is that in place or migrate. If you're running a Windows 8 machine and it's a 64-bit version of Windows 8 and he's already UEFI mode, I can do an in-place upgrade, get him to Windows 10 faster, easier, and I could reach my desired state, if you will. However, the downside is we're not going to be messing with any applications on that box. If they were 32-bit before, we're not going to change it to 64-bit. If there's any other issues on that machine, we're not really fixing them. If we go down the wiping or the migrate side of the house, this is where we're going to have to wipe the hard drive, and we're doing a fresh copy of Windows 10, not a patch or an upgrade, just a fresh copy, is it starts by capturing that user state. And again, that's why it's important to know the size of profiles that are out there so you can calculate how long this is going to take to move data around and be able to store that data at least temporarily in this process. Once we have a successful captured user state, we can force that machine to PXE boot off our network. It'll validate that the BIOS is up to date. We handle that automatically. We check to see if it is booting in UEFI mode. If it is not, we can make those BIOS updates and force a network reboot right back to our PXE server. Now we're ready to actually deploy Windows 10, making sure we're booting up in UEFI state so we can take advantage of those Windows 10 security features. We can then pass our UEF test. We can lay down the image of Windows 10, and then we walk through a basic workflow of the rest of this to put the machine back together again after that. So the first part might be maybe we're going to implement secure boot. We might do some security settings. We might remove certain software from our Windows 10 image. More on that later, but this is why I'm a fan of thin imaging. It's much easier for me to come in here and adjust settings, add to, remove, and change than it is to rebuild a Windows 10 image starting from scratch. After that, we're installing the base software. What do I mean by that? The base software is the Microsoft Office, the Adobe, the Java, the software that all the devices in your environment are going to get. Everybody gets it. The nice part here is we're going to install the latest 64-bit version of these software packages, so everybody is at a consistent state. The additional software is where we look at machines because we have the inventory of them prior to doing the wipe. And for an example, if Sally in accounting needs the SAP application or some other application she needed to do her work, we will put that application back down on her machine, but we wouldn't do it maybe for an IT person. So everybody gets the tools they need to get back to work. Again, it will be the 64-bit version of that application, if there is one, and also the latest version of that application and patched that you're licensed for. So again, maintaining a consistent environment. After that, we restore the user state. So the user has all his information, browser history, cookies, sticky notes, things of that nature back into place. And the final stage, we can might do some cleanup, rejoin it to the domain, add its host name back to what it was prior to that. But important part is we can hit the same completed part here, this green circle. This is completely automated in Champion's workflow, which is a great part of that. And we do all this so that we can have a consistent Windows 10 environment for our customers. We're very successful at this. However, in the real world, what we end up seeing is new devices were still being added in. New devices that, maybe another department bought or OEM'd in had a different version of Windows 10, different applications on it. So this led into another hurdle. How do we manage these devices going forward? And what we realized is we could create another workflow based on new equipment, new devices coming into the environment. And if you notice, it follows basically the same workflow our original migration workflow did, where there's a couple points where we might need an operator's intervention. The main goal here is we were quickly able to adhere to this change and make minor changes to our workflow that we could now support these new devices coming in. And over time, this led us to creating multiple customized workflows for all of our customers. And it literally can be done in minutes instead of trying to rebuild our Windows 10 images. And we've done it for migration, for new hires, for break fix, for equipment moving around the company. Very simple to reuse the building blocks that we had created from the very, very beginning. After this, of course, it's still trying to maintain consistency. Microsoft changed even in the past year, a couple ways of how they deliver Windows 10. They have some new features. They have Smart Screen, Windows Defender, how they're changing the Windows Service Branch, different applications. There's constantly changes happening. And again, we found that we can make quick modifications inside of our workflows to adhere and keep a consistent Windows 10 environment for our customers. Even launching and making sure we're running the new Windows Defender, making sure we're taking advantage of new features, whether we decided to turn them off or on, whether it was a change of what Microsoft delivered, or maybe the business decided for whatever reason, security or so forth, they wanted to make a change in their environment. We were able to adopt to that very quickly, be able to deliver reports to them to help them maintain their consistency going forward. Another example of this, and this chart that you're looking at here is actually right from the Microsoft site, and this is the servicing channels. So what I want to do is kind of simplify this just a little bit. And there was a lot of what they call long-term branch, service branch, all these different types of branches, but basically in a nutshell, you can bring them down to these three that you're seeing up top here. The Insider. This is for folks that want to tinker and play with Windows 10 features as they come out. It's the Insider program. For most of you out there, if you don't know what this is, don't worry about it. It means you don't really need it. Most production people are going to sit in this semi-annual channel, right? So it's broken down to three. The Insider channel, this is for guys that like to tinker with new features as they come out. For all of our customers, it's really semi-annual channel is where you want to have your machines running. However, if you are having specialized equipment, hospital equipment, ATM, kiosk machines, you can do that long-term service channel branch. This allows you to install Windows 10, and you can defer and keep that version of Windows 10 for up to 10 years. So again, this is targeted for very specialized hardware equipment. It'll still might get some patches along the way, but the main version of Windows 10 will remain the same for up to 10 years. Microsoft created what they said rings of deployment, and this is an example of one of those rings of deployment that they're showing you how you could set this up in the Microsoft tools or with Intune and so forth. And here's an example where they do previewing, targeted, broad, and critical, meaning, again, preview is that Insider channel. Again, most of our customers don't recommend it, but your targeted one might be your IT department. You want to have a set of users that are a little bit more technical, can get the updates to Windows 10, can validate your apps are still working at them, it's not breaking anything for your environment before you roll it out to the broad sense, meaning the rest of your organization. And of course, everybody's going to have some type of critical machines. Not really talking about long-term branch here, but maybe the CEOs or the executive machines, certain machines that you really don't want anything going wrong with. So that's how they did it, and I was able to pull this back under our workflow and be able to put a little more control back to us so that Windows 10 update features don't force this upon you. And the first thing you want to be able to do via group policy or our workflow is change all your machines to be this semi-annual channel, not targeted. And then what we can do is we can defer features and quality updates, the features for up to a year and the quality updates up to 30 days. This gives us the ability to control how we update certain features inside of our Windows 10 environment for our clients. And from there, we can very quickly create our own rings of deployment, quickly by setting up a filter, but that'll help us find all of the Windows 10 updated features that are available for your environment alone, in our case, our clients. And in there, I was able to simulate as what Microsoft put up there, their rings of deployment. So I created some customized sites, Windows 10 updated for our targeted machines, broad and critical. I can organize my devices under here, and now I can control when I roll out patches and updates and update features to my own devices within my corporation in our workflow. So I was hoping to show you that we can, via the Champions workflow, and what we've done with our customers is help maintaining consistency. Everything from TPM to deploying secure boot to make sure your machines are UEFI enabled. We've done integrations, for example, into BitLocker and MBAM. Windows 10 has a great enhanced security capability, especially with mobile devices and BitLocker to go, to make sure that you can kind of control that DLP or data loss prevention in your environment. We showed you how we can do rings of deployment to even control better in our environment what versions of Windows 10 is out there. Going through our migration strategy, we can really kind of control your applications as well. So we don't have 30 different versions of Flash and Adobe and Java all out there in our environment, which is much harder to maintain, but we can have a much more consistent application base as well. And at the end of the day, what we're able to deliver with Champion's workflows is a just much more consistent, maintaining consistency environment for your Windows 10 devices, because at the end of the day, these devices are really broadening your attack vector, if you will. So you want to make sure that you're secure as much as possible. And at this point in today's world, the end using devices is really where you're most vulnerable at. And with that, I also wanted to lastly say is how I added this into Las Vegas conference is the definition of intelligence, and God rest his soul, Stephen Hawking, who just recently passed. His answer to that question was, it was the ability to react to change. And we've seen a lot of changes coming up as companies are trying to move from their legacy XP, Windows 7, Windows 8 to the adoption of Windows 10, the hurdles that they have to overcome, and then quite honestly, how are we going to maintain Windows 10 going forward in your organization to keep consistency? And that is the ability to react to change. And with our workflows, we can give you that intelligence and flexibility to do so.
I thank you. That was the presentation we gave at Las Vegas then.